We're talking trades. Jimmy G is on the trade market. Our guest today, Ross Jackson of Locked On Saints. Let's see if he's got a proposal. Can he beat the Colts' proposal for Jimmy Garoppolo on today's program? The Niners bringing back some more players on some minor one-year signings, and Trey Lance working out in Huntington Beach. All that and more coming up right now.
You are Locked On 49ers, your daily San Francisco 49ers podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome to Locked On 49ers. Brian Peacock and Eric Crocker with you. Thanks for making us your first listen here on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And it is my pleasure now to bring onto the program a very important person to the Locked On Podcast Network. And he does so much behind the scenes. I want you guys to know about Ross Jackson, all the work he does. Follow him on Twitter at Ross Jackson Nola, also the host of Locked On Saints. Ross, I know you're a busy man, so thanks for carving out some time to jump on here, and maybe you can procure yourself a new quarterback for your franchise that you cover.
I'm very excited to be here with you guys. Thanks so much for having me on. Let's see if maybe Crocker doesn't fold as quickly this time around as he did with the Colts host. See if he puts up a bigger fight this time.
Yeah, my advice, Ross, start low with your first off.
Right?
He vows to pull up the sleeves and fight for this one, so we'll see if you can beat what Evan Sidery of Locked On Colts offered for Jimmy Garoppolo yesterday. And it's a really odd situation around the NFL right now. Tons of trades. Maybe we'll be able to get into the Khalil Mack stuff a little bit later if there's some time. But the quarterbacks is the name of the game right now. And there's a lot of movement this offseason with quarterbacks. Some moves we didn't see coming. Just first, before we talk Jimmy Garoppolo, what's going on with the Saints? Like, is anything going to change offensively? Because I thought Jimmy Garoppolo would be a great fit in Sean Payton's offense. And the fact that Sean Payton left made me think, maybe the Saints aren't involved. And I know you jumped on with Matt Williamson and I on the Peacock and Williamson NFL show and talked about how it was chump change. This whole $70 million over the salary cap stuff. Saints, it doesn't matter at all. Could the Saints even carve out $25 million? And what's the plan there at quarterback and on offense with the Saints now?
Well, I'll tell you, it's still chump change, right? At this point now, the Saints have made 5 moves and they have trimmed away over half of that $76 million overage. They're somewhere between $30 to $35 million. They restructure Marshawn Lattimore. That saves $18 million. They restructure Alvin Kamara, and they're basically like $900,000 over the salary cap. So it's all a joke. We all know how it goes. But for the New Orleans Saints, they still have some extra work to get done, of course. And one of those things is going to be finding that quarterback. And in terms of what's going to happen there, what I can tell you is that the top priority for the Saints is to maintain Jameis Winston and to bring Jameis Winston back as long as his recovery and rehabilitation goes well. So this is where the Saints are maybe in a little bit of a different situation than some of the other quarterback needy teams, is that they're willing to wait, which I think is something that is important when it comes to the Jimmy Garoppolo sweepstakes too. How long are teams willing to wait around for medical clearance? Because the Saints might have to wait around for medical clearance when it comes to Jameis Winston as well. So that is a big piece of it. But Jimmy Garoppolo is not far down that list. I mean, you look at what the Saints emphasis has been so far this offseason. It's been continuity, cohesion, familiarity. Jameis Winston is at the top of that list. Teddy Bridgewater's there, also coming off of an injury from this past season. And then Jimmy Garoppolo is probably the third option, if we're being honest, in terms of the names that have been floated around out there. And he would be somebody that would bring a little bit of familiarity, a little bit of comfort to the New Orleans Saints, as somebody that can get the plays out of the huddle, which are not easy in the New Orleans Saints offense, nor are they in Kyle Shanahan's offense, which is a huge piece. And will be able to make the right decisions without always looking at maybe the running back out of the backfield, but instead pushing the ball downfield a little bit more, even in the short and intermediate areas. I think those are qualities that the Saints would like to be able to bring to New Orleans in 2022.
It's interesting because when you looked at in years past, you would look at the efficiency numbers, and it was always, in time to throw, it was always Drew Brees, Jimmy Garoppolo. I think he brings a very similar style to that. Get the ball out in 2.5 seconds, 2.3 seconds. Get it out of your hands, get into the hands of your playmakers, especially late in Drew Brees' career. I mean, people want to say, Jimmy Garoppolo can't throw the ball down the field. Drew Brees didn't have much of an arm late in his career, and they were winning tons of games. It was a really good offensive system, get the team in the right play, and that right play might be a run play too.
Right,
So
absolutely.
Dropping back and taking sacks and chucking YOLO balls down the field might be impressive sometimes, and it, you might be able to show off a bigger arm for some quarterbacks in the NFL, but there's something to be said for efficiency and getting into the right play and getting the ball out of your hands as a quarterback. And that's where Drew Brees excelled as much as any quarterback probably ever. And that's where Jimmy Garoppolo excels too. And he had a stretch of very Drew Brees-like efficiency in the middle part of the 49ers season this year. So that would be fun to see, and see what they could do with Alvin Kamara out of the backfield with someone like Jimmy Garoppolo. Jameis Winston's not that type of guy, though. So those are two very different quarterbacks.
That's what I want to ask, Ross.
Yeah.
So there have been a lot of, 49er fans talking about, on social media, who would you rather have? Jameis Winston at his price tag, whatever that is, or trade for Jimmy Garoppolo? So, you watched the first however many games Jameis Winston played before the injury. What was kind of one of your big takeaways between seeing that version of him and maybe what you think you're getting in Jimmy Garoppolo?
Well, I'll tell you, it was a very different version of Jameis Winston, right? 14 touchdowns to 3 interceptions, not the touchdown to interception ratio anyone expected from him. 6 games and a quarter, basically, until he was injured, had that ACL tear at home against the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, a game that the Saints ended up still winning with Trevor Siemian coming in relief. But one of the things that you could look at is the percentage of distribution in terms of depth in the passing game for Jameis Winston and how different it was. Only 13.7% of his passes that he threw in 2022 were beyond 20 yards of line of scrimmage. The majority of his passes, 36.6%, coming between 0 to 9 yards. It was in the short and intermediate area that he did most of his work and also most of his damage. 378 yards when throwing within 10 yards, 319 of his just over 1,000 yards coming when he was throwing between 10 to 19 yards, and then benefiting a little bit off of yards after catch, but not a ton of yards after catch in this New Orleans Saints offense where wide receivers struggled quite a bit in 2022. So it was a different Jameis. If you go back to, let's say, the big time, we were talking about YOLO balls earlier, the big time YOLO season, which was the 30 interception season, of course, infamously for Jameis Winston. You saw a lot more of that passing distribution geared towards downfield, but also a lot of turnovers within 0 to 19 yards. It was 25 of his 30 interceptions came in that short and intermediate area. You didn't see that type of issue in 2021 with the Saints.
Why have the Saints not re-signed Jameis Winston already?
I imagine it's medical clearance, right? He's still rehabbing. He's still in the midst of his recovery. I think that's probably a big part of it. We don't know how close he is to getting that medical clearance. We've seen him now on football fields working out. We've seen him in New Orleans quite a bit. So there are some things that are connecting there. Mickey Loomis mentioned that, that Jameis Winston is absolutely an option for New Orleans, and they hope to be an option for Jameis. But as soon as he gets that medical clearance, it's not just going to be the Saints. It's going to be the Steelers. It might be the Indianapolis Colts. It might be the Tampa Bay Buccaneers looking for a reunion. It could be the Carolina Panthers for a little bit of a wild card in this entire situation as well. These other quarterback needy teams that could potentially get into the mix here too. So that would be the other part that would end up extending some of these negotiations, is if they end up getting into a bidding war, which New Orleans Saints don't generally like to do, right? They generally set a price, and if you can't come in at that price, then they move on to the next guy. And so I think that all of those things are a factor in why they haven't just re-signed him, because they can, because he's still technically a New Orleans Saint at this time. They could just re-sign him or extend him, but maybe it's the medical clearance that's kind of holding that up at the moment.
All right. Well, I'm going to step back here then, and let's play this out a little bit. Jameis Winston becomes not an option for the New Orleans Saints. Do the Saints throw an offer at the 49ers, and GM Ross Jackson and GM Eric Crocker, what would that offer look like? And we'll see if Crock caves as quickly for the Saints offer as he did for the Colts offer yesterday.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, I don't think the Saints wait long. I think if they can't get Jameis Winston, they don't go to Teddy Bridgewater first and then make this offer. So I think they're making this offer with Teddy Bridgewater still available. So that gives them a little bit of a security blanket in terms of their negotiations. So I know that the Colts will be coming at you with a 3rd round pick, right? They pick in the middle of the 3rd round. The Saints have a 3rd round pick. It's compensatory, so it's not until 100 at that point. So I'm going to look to back up a little bit first, and I'm going to put out an offer of a 4th round pick that starts with a 119 in this year's draft. And to add on top of that, what I'll also throw in is Bradley Roby, the cornerback. New Orleans Saints probably going to look to shed his salary, not because they're in salary cap trouble, but because he's going to play like 30% of snaps in the Saints defense, and he's making about $10 million. So it helps to shed some of the salary that they'll need to make room for Jimmy Garoppolo and give San Francisco a corner along with a pick in this year's draft.
So I'm looking at your picks right now. I don't know if you're trying to, get me to commit to something too quick, but it looks like you guys have picked 50, 97, and 98. Are there two kind of third round picks in that range?
The third round picks it's going to be a compensatory pick in the third, but they don't have their own third any longer. That ended up conveying to Houston for Bradley Roby, actually. So they have a pick 50.
I might have two comp picks.
They only have one third round comp pick. There might be one for Trey Hendrickson, but right now it's projected to be a fourth round pick, which would be in like the 137, 136 area.
All right. Well, you did, kind of talk about your concerns with Jameis Winston and him getting medically cleared. Obviously, if you guys were to trade for a Jimmy Garoppolo right now, he isn't cleared. So there is the worry with that. But one thing we have seen with Jimmy Garoppolo, as opposed to Jameis Winston, is the ability to not only play on a team that goes to the playoffs, but goes deep into the playoffs. You have not seen that from Jameis Winston. So he started off well last season. Can he sustain that? I'm going to err more on the side of no, not him. So kind of have no choice right now but to go towards a Jimmy Garoppolo. And, I know you want to offer a pick and Roby. We kind of have nice little cornerbacks that we like, and a couple guys want to bring back, and some guys we're talking to free agency. So we'd rather take the picks and be able to build that way. And we're going to take the comp pick in the third round. And we also want to ask for a third next year as well. That if Jimmy Garoppolo plays 70% of the snaps, that actually turns into a second round pick.
So you want the Carson Wentz trade. Here's the thing about the Carson Wentz trade. Carson Wentz is healthy presently. At this moment, July would be the point to where we know anything about Jimmy Garoppolo. So I expect that if any kind of trade is going to happen, it's going to be close to, let's say, draft time. So that's about next month. So I'd be fine with giving you and swapping over to the third round compensatory pick. Happy to move up to that. But instead of giving you a third round pick that could potentially convey into a second round pick next year, what if I offered you the third and the regular fourth? So 100 and 119, somewhere around that area. Obviously, compensatory picks are going to fudge around the numbers. But what if I stuck to this year, gave you a 3 and a 4 this year, as opposed to making you wait to see how something might convey from a third round pick to a second round pick next year?
Hold on, guys.
I want to ask my assistant GM how he feels about that.
Yeah, please.
I'm actually going to tell the folks about BetOnline because it's free time, and I'm going to let everybody have a little suspense here with this and let Crock think about it for a second. I'm going to think about it myself because it's tourney time. It's that time of year again. College basketball's tournament is finally upon us. From all the latest odds, contests, and player props, BetOnline.net is the #1 source for all your sports betting needs and information. There's nothing that's more fun to bet on throughout the entire sports year than the college tournament. So get over there, find all the games that you can bet on at BetOnline. And, I mean, there's still football. You can bet on which quarterback will be the Saints starter in 2022. You can bet on Super Bowl futures, draft props at BetOnline. And pro basketball as well, hockey, UFC, boxing, and even some Vegas casino games, a little poker, a little blackjack as well. So get over to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more about all of the trends and all of the actions at BetOnline, where the game starts. Okay. Crock, and look, and Ross, you said that Crock's offer, his counter was the Indianapolis Colts Washington deal. You didn't ask me to swap second round picks.
Oh yeah, I forgot about the 5 pick. I forgot about the 5 position swap. My apologies.
That's worth some points there. All right. So what was that last offer again, Ross?
So the last offer would be the 2 compensatory, or not the 2 compensatory picks. I apologize. The compensatory pick from the third round, which should be somewhere around 100, and then the regular, like the initial 4th round selection for New Orleans, which should be around 119. So about 20 picks apart. These two.
100 and 119 this year.
This year.
What are you thinking, Peacock?
So I need more, but I'm willing to wait. And I know that Jimmy Garoppolo's health is a concern. So that's why I would be willing to go into 2023 for a pick to get a round higher of a pick, but with some conditions to make sure that we can seal that. And I don't think I can come out of this trade if I'm the 49ers without either a second round pick this year or a second round pick next year, as long as it's, and I would understand if you want conditions there that it could become a third round pick, so that even in the most disastrous scenario, the Saints are giving up a third round pick next year and not a second round pick.
Okay.
Now, if that second round pick has to be next year, then you take a later pick this year. So something like 119 this year, and then that 2 that could become a 3.
Mm-hmm. That's
something that interests Ross Jackson.
That's
Crock, as long as you sign off on that. I'm advising you in this situation.
I think the potentially getting a second round pick for Jimmy Garoppolo, who I really would take a third, but don't tell Ross Jackson and the New Orleans Saints that.
And hey, Crock, here's the other thing, Crock, is we've already been talking with the Indianapolis Colts who still don't have a quarterback, and we know they'd be willing to go to basically the deal that they got from Washington. So we know we can pretty much get a 3 this year and a 3 that can become a 2 next year from the Colts. So Ross kind of needs to beat that. And I know he listened to our podcast yesterday, so he knows where that is. Unless, of course, Crock already caved and said yes on just the 3rd round pick.
Yeah, he might have already just taken the first phone call that came in.
But he's competitive with, a 4th and then a 2 or a 3 next year, something like that.
Hold on, real quick. I have to explain myself on that. I didn't have the Colts picks up in front of me. I didn't know what picks they had. So I kind of went in there. I was a little unprepared for the question. And, so I had to jump on the first thing that they offered. My bad, 49er fans. And I got a lot of grief for that by 49er fans today on social media. Shout out to all the Locked On 49er listeners.
Yeah. And which one of y'all got more grief? Crock, you on the trade or Brian for not watching Power?
Me on the trade. But the Power crowd is coming. The Power crowd is coming for him.
Yeah, they'll be here late, though.
49ers fans, and it's why we have so many listeners, is they're crazy about the 49ers. And if you bring up anything that's not 49ers related, they're like, yeah, I'm not sure what that is either. Yeah,
So here's what I'll say. Guys. The 119, so the standard, the original 4th round selection for the New Orleans Saints for this year in 2022, as well as a 3rd next year that could convey to a 2nd based upon percentage of snaps. So I won't go to 75%, but I'll go to 65% snaps as opposed to games started. And then if that's good enough, then we have a deal. If not, I go to Teddy Bridgewater and I put him back in the most successful system he's been in his, since his early Minnesota days. And I'm pretty comfortable with that for a year, maintaining my draft stock and then moving into next year's fantastic rookie quarterback class. So that's kind of where I am. That's really the furthest that I think I go if I'm the New Orleans Saints.
That makes sense. I would say to that before Croc says whether he or not he would take that deal. I would say, Ross, that would you rather have a quarterback who wears a bunch of gloves or a quarterback that wins? I would much rather a guy that wears a bunch of gloves and wins, because he's 5-0 in the New Orleans Saints system. Now that was with Sean Payton. Sean Payton, of course. But that Pete Carmichael system is going to be very similar. It's one of the reasons why I think Jimmy Garoppolo would still be a really good fit in New Orleans, even without Sean Payton there. Pete Carmichael is going to move forward that same Sean Payton system, or a similar system that would work really well with Garoppolo under center. Teddy Bridgewater or Jimmy
Peacock.
Question.
One thing I don't like is when I feel like someone that they're trying to, give me an ultimatum. Mm-hmm. So,
you don't like to leave it?
No, I don't like that at all. I tell my wife, no ultimatums with me. I'm always going to do the opposite. So if he's telling us take it or they're going to take Teddy Bridgewater, well, y'all take that loser Teddy Bridgewater then.
I'm fine.
And try to win with that. We'll keep Jimmy Garoppolo. We'll trade him somewhere else.
Yeah,
I think take
that's the guy that throws short of the sticks. Take the guy that throws a 3-yard out on 3rd and 8.
Happily.
Yeah.
You have fun with that.
I'll just go to the draft, grab somebody like a Wan'Dale Robinson that can get some, yards after catch, which I would have had to do with Jimmy anyway.
You're going to need them.
You're going to need that. So that's no problem with me.
I think a 4th this year and a 2nd to become a 3rd, or a 3rd to become a 2nd next year. I think that's about right. That feels good. I'd be okay with taking that deal if, a team like the Colts or a team like the Steelers wasn't beating it. If that was the best offer, I think the 49ers should take that deal. I think
that's the best offer.
They're actually asking for more, potentially. And if the Colts come calling to the 49ers, they're almost telling the Niners, we like your guy more than we liked our guy, and we already know what our guy was worth. And so I wonder if that works against the Colts in some ways, and maybe works against a lot of teams that probably hope they could spend less on a guy like Wentz or a guy like Jimmy G. So it's going to be fascinating to see how this goes. Real quick, Ross, out the door, I don't think bringing back Winston, re-signing Bridgewater, trading for Garoppolo would really hinder the Saints from still drafting and developing a quarterback and letting that guy hang around for a year or two before he's ready to play. We just saw the Niners do that last year. Is there a name that's making sense for the Saints that you think they might like in the draft at quarterback?
Yeah, I think Kenny Pickett would be the guy. I personally really like Malik Willis. I think Malik Willis has a lot of the tools. He's got the big arm. He has the ability to play out of structure. He plays out of structure a little bit more than he plays in structure, but that's just college football at this point. So I think that's somebody that fits a little bit more of a pro style offense, even with the hand size situations. I agreed with Crock's analysis over on the Locked On NFL Draft podcast when he mentioned bring him to a dome team when he plays, and he's going to play in a division against a dome team and in North Carolina and in Tampa where it's going to be humid and it's going to help. So I'm not too worried about all that. Taysom doesn't have the biggest hands either. The Saints were perfectly happy putting him under center. That won't be happening very likely in 2022. So I think that with that, Kenny Pickett is the one that sort of checks all the boxes in terms of the athleticism scores that the Saints care about, as well as the, kind of the Bill Parcells quarterback commandments 7 item checklist. He's the only quarterback this season that really checks all those boxes. So I think that Pickett would be the one to watch. They could potentially move up from 18 to go after him if they want to, but now some of these, lesser quarterback hungry teams are falling off in the early portion of the draft, which is helpful to New Orleans.
It's really tough to hit those Parcells commandments these days. Nobody plays enough college.
That's right. Yeah.
But that would be pretty amazing, actually, if the Saints cornered the market on quarterbacks who have gloves on their throwing hands.
Yeah, gotta love that.
Perfect sense.
And Taysom last year too.
Yeah, that's awesome. All right, fantastic stuff, Ross. Appreciate you jumping on with us, and we appreciate all the things you do for the network behind the scenes.
Anytime, my guys. Thanks for having me on.
All right, let's talk a little bit about Built Bars, shall we, Crock? By the way, fantastic job on your part by sneaking in the Built Bar mention, talking about Jimmy Garoppolo, and that was fantastic. And all Built Bars do is win, right? So
all they do is win.
Yeah, the folks out there, how do they do it? Right? Is that what? How do they do it? How do they get all that flavor in there without all the sugar? Only 130 calories in most Built Bars, only 4 grams of sugar, only 4 grams of net carbs, and 17 grams of protein. And have you tried Built Bar Puffs? The world's
They have to try the Puffs. Listen,
Crock loves the Puffs.
I was there in Mobile, Alabama with Ross, who was just on the show, and he had a bunch of the Puffs. That was my first time trying the protein-infused marshmallow protein bar. It was amazing. So if you haven't, they have plenty of flavors. I believe they had the key lime. I like key lime pie in general, but they had the key lime pie flavor. Awesome. You got to try the Puffs.
Yeah, Puffs are very interesting. I'm a bigger fan of the classic flavors. Love the peanut butter. That is my number one. It always has been, and I think it always will stay as my number one. But you can find any flavor of Built Bar that tickles your fancy. New flavors coming up all the time, or get yourself a mixed box of Built Bars at BuiltBot.com. All you got to do is go to Built.com, use promo code LOCKED15 to get 15% off your order. That is promo code LOCKED15 for 15% off at Built.com. Some big news, not as big as some of the other news that's going on in the NFL, but the 49ers are doing some things and prepping for free agency, and nothing earth-shattering here, but bringing back some players that were expected to come back that were restricted free agents and exclusive rights free agents and all of that. The Niners have signed 4 players to 1-year extensions: defensive lineman Kevin Givens and Maurice Hurst, running back JaMycal Hasty, and offensive lineman Colton McKivitz. They also added Nate Sudfeld on a futures reserve contract. So the Niners doing some things, getting prepped for free agency, and those were all players that we knew, or we had a really good, strong feeling that they would be back as those restricted free agents. So the 49ers doing a little bit of work there. Maurice Hurst is the one that sticks out to me, and Kevin Givens has been a really good find for the 49ers. But man, if Maurice Hurst can stay healthy, and that's dogged him for a long time, going all the way back to Michigan, Maurice Hurst is a pretty darn good player. And if the 49ers, look, there's 2 defensive linemen there. If the 49ers lose DJ Jones, they're going to need some help from some of these guys. Kinlaw being the big one, but they're going to need some other depth, and maybe even go into the draft again at defensive tackle. They're going to need some depth and some guys to help out. And I think Maurice Hurst could really be that sort of penetrating defensive tackle to help out in sub packages.
Yeah, I like what you said about Hurst. That's the guy that has some legit potential, and when he's on the field, I think he could be good, but he just has to be healthy. And that was the thing right away last season. Started off kind of banged up, hurt, or whatever, and I felt like he just was never able to truly get into the groove. Came back later in the season, but I think by then the 49ers kind of have found their groove with the rotation that they want at the defensive line. So hopefully he can stay healthy for an entire season. And I think a lot of people were hoping that Hurst had the impact that Key had. So if they, can get something out of him, I think that'd be an awesome job.
Yeah, if you asked me before the season, he or Hurst, who's going to be the bigger impact guy, I would have said Hurst. And I've loved his tape all the way back to Michigan. Can he stay healthy is the key. Um, you said something interesting last week when we were talking about Brian Greasy being signed as quarterback coach for the 49ers, and that it's the offseason. It's the QB coaches. It's away from the team when quarterbacks work most on their actual motion and their throwing delivery and all those mechanical things. And they do some mechanical work. And I know Kyle Shanahan likes his quarterbacks to throw a certain way, especially lower half and footwork and all of those things. But we've got some insight into Trey Lance's workouts in Huntington Beach. He's working at 3D QB. We heard a lot from 3D QB last year with the draft lead up and John Beck working out with some guys. And John Beck is involved with this 3D QB, as is the guy that right now, and Tom House, the famous, throwing mechanics guy, Tom House, former Major League pitcher. Adam Dedeaux is the guy who's working with Trey Lance right now in Huntington Beach. And he said, quote, "The goal is to get as much support around him as possible," talking about Trey Lance, "and to get him dialed in for this year. It's a big year." So, what are your thoughts on Trey Lance's workouts? And I think there were some photos of Trey Lance working out down there. Obviously, any photo of Trey Lance is going to be impressive because he's an impressive dude. But yeah, I think tighten up some delivery stuff, maybe that'll help fix some of the accuracy issues. Your brain is wrapped around the playbook after that first year where I'm sure his head was spinning for the first part of the season there. You got your feet wet a little bit, got to get in some games, a couple starts. He's primed for a huge season. This is the biggest offseason in Trey Lance's pro career.
Yeah, big time. And I think there's a couple things that really jump out right away. I think getting the feet right. You talked about tightening up the throwing motion and things like that. And I think you can get by with the throwing motion, but what you have to get more consistency from is the lower body mechanics. Now, this isn't just something I came up with, and this isn't what Eric Crocker sees. I reach out to guys that know a lot more than me. And one of the first guys I reached out to, JT O'Sullivan, when everybody was saying, hey, his throwing motion is too long. Look at it, it goes below his waist. I reached out to JT O'Sullivan. I said, hey, any issues with his throwing motion? A lot of 49er fans are kind of, making a big deal out of it. And, is that issue? And you know how JT is. He's pretty kind of straight to the point type of guy. No issues with throwing motion. I'm like, okay. But I also watched his breakdowns. And one thing that he consistently comes back to, especially with guys that tend to kind of miss, is the feet. So I think if you fix his feet, that's where a lot of his issues with being consistent as a thrower will help. Now, we talk about that, and I think we saw a lot of misses in preseason. We saw misses for sure in the Seahawks game. We saw misses in the Arizona game. We didn't really see misses in the Texans game. So I don't know if there were some things that he just improved on, or maybe him just getting more comfortable. But I think still taking that next step with the accuracy, the timing, getting the ball out from a mental standpoint, whatever they can kind of simulate in these workouts, I think that's going to help the kid a ton.
Absolutely. And I know JT O'Sullivan talks a lot about the lower half, and he actually loves Jimmy Garoppolo for that. Jimmy Garoppolo is like his poster boy for just being so solid in the lower half, keeping the legs spread apart. He hates when quarterbacks get heel clicky, and it raises your head, and they get heel clicky into the throw, and he says that affects accuracy quite a bit. So yeah, I mean, there's a ton of work for Trey Lance to do, and he can continue to get better in just the smallest details throughout his career. But man, this offseason, he's not working out for the draft. He's getting ready to play football. He's into the playbook. This is such a big year for Trey Lance. I agree with Adam Dedeaux on that.
Yeah, and I think one thing that'll really help him, you talked about the heel clicky aspect of it, and Kyle Shanahan, some of the drills that they work on with the lower body mechanics. And, there's always that video of Trey Lance, like, moving forward, moving backward, sliding back. And if you notice, he stays more in a kind of a squatty position and throws from there, because you talked about the accuracy issues. And again, it's not Eric Crocker or whatever. It's just what my QB guys, the specialists, what they tell me. All right. When you get heel clicky, as you said, you raise up. Now the target raises up. You go down to throw the ball. Now the target goes down. And then when you raise up to actually let the ball go, now you done moved a whole lot. That it's hard to be accurate that way. Same thing if you are talking to a receiver. Remember Jerry Rice talking about running down the field, tracking a ball in, and some guys, their head moves while they're running. Well, the ball is going to move while you're running. So, the guys that track the ball in the best, bet that head is really still, and they bring the ball in. As far as the throwing again, I want to touch on it one more time, because I think a lot of people talk about that. One thing that Greg Pinelli, my guy, shout out to my guy, Greg Pinelli, comes on with me on the YouTube channel. Greg talks about not really doing a whole lot of fixing the throwing motion. And his thing is, look, throwing this way has gotten this guy to this level. It's gotten him to the position where he's the 3rd overall pick. So do you want to work on tightening things up a little bit? Yes, but you don't want to rework it to the point where he's more focused on the way he's kind of delivering the ball as opposed to, the feet and things like that, because then you're not gonna be yourself. So do you want to work on those things and kind of help improve the throw? Yes, but you don't want to completely rework it. And I don't think he needs to. I know one thing, last thing I'll say, Greg Pinelli talks about his quick hands. So even if you kind of have a little bit more of a longer draw with your release, if you have quick hands to where it comes back and goes forward quick, then you're fine. So speeding up that'll help as well, as opposed to saying, oh, you need to shorten that motion up, just quicker hands. That's at least what Greg said. I'm not a QB guy. Take it up with him if you disagree.
Yeah. Is the throw coming out on time? Is it where it needs to be on time? And are you throwing it accurately? I think that's the most important part first, not so much what it looks like. And it's funny because JT O'Sullivan said the same thing about Justin Fields. And there's a lot of people talking. There was like a report where the people inside the league are worried about his long delivery. It's not like they didn't see all this stuff. You don't draft a guy in the top 10 and the top 3 and think he's a disaster throwing the football and don't like his delivery. Like, yeah, maybe it's longer than ideal, but is the ball coming out on time, and is it coming out where it needs to be? And are you accurate? And do you throw with velocity and all those things? And these guys continue to work. Tom Brady was continuing to work on his delivery when he's 45 years old, right? I'm sure he's doing that right now. So these deliveries will start to, I'm sure, just get a little bit more compact and a little bit more compact as time goes on, but you're not going to completely trash what this guy's done and the way these players throw. And you knew what these guys threw like before you drafted them. And you're not going to draft someone who's a complete disaster. So I think the elongated delivery stuff is just BS for both those guys.
Well, I think a lot of people, their head automatically goes to Tim Tebow, who had a long release, but he also had a long release and a slow release. So that's the one thing you don't want to have. You don't have a slow release. Now, Trey Lance has some passes batted down, and a lot of people equated that to, long release. That's why the passes are getting batted down. I listen to Steve Young and a few other guys, and that's not why the passes are getting batted down. They said a lot of times, especially younger guys, they'll get some passes batted down because of their eyes. They come up, if they're looking at where they're going to throw, the pass rusher stop. Look, when is he going to throw it? Oh, he's throwing it, and they get their hands up, and they bat the ball down, as opposed to somebody like Jimmy Garoppolo, who comes up and boom, I mean, he gets the ball out his hand so quick, it's hard for guys to even be able to time it, except for a couple times late in the Super Bowl against Kansas City Chiefs. But aside from that, it's hard to time it. So I think there's so much that goes into the quarterback position. Anybody, if you ever have questions, go ask the specialist guy. Don't look on Twitter for what this random person is saying. Ask me, hey, Crock, what do you think about this? Can you ask JT O'Sullivan? I'll DM JT O'Sullivan. He will respond. He always responds. I'll ask Greg, and they'll give you a legit, real informed answer from guys that either train guys. Greg trains Josh Allen, right? He spends a lot of time working with Josh Allen when he's not working with like Carson Palmer or whoever. Not Carson Palmer, Jordan Palmer. But I'll get my response from Greg right away. I can call him anytime, or I'll message JT O'Sullivan. He'll respond if you want to know the real about what goes into playing the quarterback position.
That's right. Always go to the real.
Go to the real.
All right. Fun
Twitter's
stuff.
not real. Twitter's not a real place.
Twitter's fun sometimes. But you have to wade through the BS. You have to have a strong BS meter in this game, right? You got to have a strong BS meter when you're on Twitter and seeing some of these things, and even some of the anonymous stuff that comes from a league source and guys who are speaking for the entire league. Every single person in the entire league thinks so and so has an elongated release. It's going to be a problem. It's like, what are you talking about, dude? One anonymous jackhole gave you some information and you're going to run with it, and then that guy's trash now for the rest of his career because of one guy's opinion. So go to the source. Go to the real. Love it. All right, fantastic stuff. Thanks everybody for making us your first listen. For your second listen, check out Crock doing Locked On NFL Draft Daily. What's on tap for Locked On NFL Draft, by the way, Crock?
We got a mock draft coming up on Monday, and today or tonight. Well, by the time y'all listen to it, so this is Friday morning. Just talking about some more prospects, man. Some prospects that maybe you should know about with myself and my co-host Ryan Tracy. Shout out to Ryan Tracy with Rogue Analytics.
You'll be learning about prospects. Find out who Crock mocked at number 3 from this last Mock Draft Monday podcast. To what prospect that might shock you that he had at number 3 overall to the Houston Texans? You can check out Peacock and Williamson as well daily right here on the network. Crock and I will hopefully be talking about some big news when we reconvene Sunday night for the Monday morning podcast right here. Locked On 49ers.